Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 9. I think it's episode 9. Don't shoot me if I'm wrong. Of my Link Building Fundamentals podcast series. So, today I want to talk about basically the last 12 months, which is the fuckboy of link building, which is digital PR. Literally everybody, every man and his dog has been trying to sell it like it's the new hot potato of the link building market. And I understand why. We'll get into it, exactly why it's important, why everyone's trying to sell it, why you should be interested in that type of service. However, um, I could talk personally about our situation. So it's been a really, really difficult service to launch properly. We launched it about 3, 4 years ago. Basically, didn't know what we were doing because we're, really well known, well established link building agency. But it doesn't mean that we've got, great relationships with journalists or know exactly the sort of pitch that journalists will want to be interested in, what the hooks need to be. I just don't know. We thought we knew what it was all about, didn't know what it was all about, hired the wrong people. So 3, 4 years ago, we tried bringing on traditional PRs, trying to get them to kind of go a bit more digital. It's a completely different thing. Traditional PR needs different sort of approach, and it was basically a disaster. Then we tried to use a handful of freelancers that basically sold us down the river, told us they could deliver a load of things, and didn't, and then still wanted to get paid 5 or 6 grand per campaign, which was not much fun. So fast forward, our Reachology 3.0, I think we'll call it, has been much more successful, with a caveat that we still lost money over the last 3 months. I'll dive into that with you in a bit more detail. But for the clients, they're getting really good coverage. Now, they're not getting loads and loads of coverage really, really quickly like you would in link building, nor is it as fast as maybe other digital PR agencies might deliver. And the reason why I'm saying that is there's a reason for that. So, really fast, quick, tenuous PR. What I mean by that is getting some coverage and kind of loosely attaching it to your closest client in terms of relevancy, getting out the door, setting off fireworks, telling the client that you've got the link live and everyone's really, really happy. That sort of PR is very easy, very quick to do. Now, there are some people in the market that have simply got so many clients that they can just come up with a story on a Monday morning and then choose between 7 estate agents or mortgage brokers, whoever it might be. Oh, a story about the Bank of England base rate changing, wonderful, and attach somebody to it, press save, and get out of the door and get it covered. It's fine in some scenarios where the coverage is relevant. However, in most scenarios, it's not. And I've seen tons and tons of really awful digital PR where the kind of connection between the person giving the comment or providing the data makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I'll give you a prime example. We had a client who had a kind of ticket comparison site for football. We ran a really in-depth data study that talked about ticket fraud, the cost of the industry. We had kind of like expert insight, got some nice links, didn't get loads, but got really, really contextually relevant links. Very valuable, in our opinion. They were a bit unhappy about the pace of it. They went to a competitor. They did a spot the difference between two photos of fans in the crowd and then tied it into them because it was football. It got in the Sun, got in the Metro, but it didn't do anything in terms of supporting a central entity. Now, I'm going to give you the basics of what digital PR is. I'm also going to give you a prediction of where I think it's going. So today, it's mid-November 2025. I think that there's going to be a big Google algorithm update coming at some point to clobber digital PR. I'll explain why. Historically, what happens is that smart SEOs find a tactic, it works well, it improves the client site, everybody else jumps on the bandwagon, just like digital PR, and then it starts to work a little bit less, doesn't work as well, doesn't move the needle as well, people start asking questions, and Google releases some horrible big update that then smashes the industry and ruins all the fun for everybody. I think this industry is long overdue an update, and I said this 2, 3 months ago. I feel like that's coming. So something that we saw in the leak last year was the context around the link, or the brand mention, citation, whatever you want to call it, within Google, the Google algorithm leak, which you can read up about. I can do a video about it, but somebody that I know had insight. They leaked the algorithm. We don't know what version of it was, but it was quite It must have been recent because some of the context of what was in that was very recent. Some of the stuff they talked about. So within that was talking about the 100 words plus that surround the link, the contextual relevancy, the engine behind it in Google that's able to determine relevancy. Now, because PR has become productized, and where it used to be 30, 40 grand for a campaign, only the big brands could do it. There was no guarantee, only kind of your big market players could gamble that kind of cash on something not working. It used to be really, really hard. It was very hard to do. People didn't have the budget, which means that getting any old link on those sites was difficult. Nowadays, journalists are desperate to have coverage. And again, we can talk about it in a bit more detail. Desperate to have coverage from good agencies. So the barrier to entry is a lot lower. The price point for PR has come down. So, proportionately, there's an awful lot of noise going out there. And again, Google at some point is going to have to find a way, turn up the dial to determine what is good coverage and what isn't. And I'm sure it's going to be down to relevancy. So for us as an agency, if it's a case of getting a link and it's tenuous and it's not closely aligned with the client, or not getting it, I would rather not get it. I'd rather mostly get as relevant coverage as we possibly can. Now, to the detriment, I'm going to talk about the money now, which I teased at the beginning. The last 3 months, we've actually lost money. It was almost 30 grand we've lost as a business. And we make a lot of money on the other side, the other parts of the group, so it's fine. We're big boys, we can cope with it. However, the reason why we're losing money is simply because we're not delivering the work quick enough. So, at a crossroads where we either increase the price a little bit and still deliver really, really good quality of the work, which is where I want to go with it, or we just produce irrelevant spam. And I don't want to do that because we end up just becoming a sea of noise. Clients aren't going to get cut through. I don't think those articles will get cited in AI visibility tools. I don't think Google's going to pass as much value to it. And God forbid one of these updates does come, any long-term investment in PR that's irrelevant is going to get smashed to bits and you're going to lose all that investment. So for me, I would much rather just make it a little bit more expensive to deliver really good work. So that's where we're at as an agency in terms of finances. It's very, very hard to deliver PR profitably unless you basically serve up dog shit, and I'm not willing to do that. So let's go back to basics. I'm going to break down exactly what digital PR is and why it's important. So digital PR is diagnosed by the approach that you use to acquire the link and typically the level of authority that those publishers carry. So when you think about digital PR, certainly in the UK, you're thinking broadsheet, newsstand, big publishers, specialist niche sites. So it might be the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, the Sun, the Guardian, those types of sites. But also if it's a niche client, it might be, estate agent today, This Is Money, anything that's kind of very, very specific B2B within their space. Now those sites are very, very, very unlikely to just accept 500 quid and for someone to post on it. There are a few that will have promotional articles, and I'm sure that there are some backhanders going on between journalists and very big media companies that keep quiet. But for like 90% of the market, including us, we've got to earn those links. Now, the way in which you earn the links really is down to you, but the digital PR agency or the specialist has to determine what's normal for the industry. So you look at competitors, get a feel for the methods that they've used to acquire these links and try to kind of reverse engineer it. So you're going to be using a blend of newsjacking. Now that's just a sexy word for media monitoring. So that's where an agency will basically set up 1,000 alerts on journalists, newspapers, titles, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, anywhere that there's conversation in these types of publishers. They will be setting up tracking for all sorts of different niches. Now, there's loads of tools that will do it. We like to use a blend of tools and do some manually. But you're basically monitoring anything to do with the press. The Daily Mail is a massive title. They normally break 20, 30 stories very early in the day. That's a really good resource. So it's basically keeping track of everything that's current, everything in the news agenda. If a journalist farts, you're going to know about it. So those tools enable you to find articles that are just breaking. And then you're basically reaching out to that journalist and offering expert commentary, insight, data, whatever it might be, to strengthen those articles. So that's your news jackings, media monitoring. It's taking advantage of the news agenda, jacking it to steer it towards a commercial goal, which is getting a link or a brand mention within that piece. That's newsjacking. Thought leadership is exactly as it sounds. It's where you've got a very knowledgeable, experienced client within a certain sector, and they have either a lot of depth of knowledge that they want to share, which has weight, has kudos, or they've got a strong opinion. Someone who's got a problem in the market, it needs legislation, it's broken, they don't like something about it, whatever it might be. Strong opinions on X subject. What you'll typically do with that is you'll pitch a B2B title, normally an exclusive piece. So if you're going to go to them with, unusual, brand new insight in a subject, a journalist likes to take it and make it their own. So that is your thought leadership pieces. And then the last part is data-driven digital PR. And that, again, can be broken down into subsections. But ultimately, you are getting something of value. And it's normally, a large form piece of data, statistics. It might be a data study. You might repurpose it into an infographic or something kind of visual, maybe even a tool which leans more towards asset link building. But the core of it is the data. So you have to have something that demonstrates some diversity or disparity between user types, customer types, locations, anything like that. So an example might be making a freedom of information request with a load of councils across the UK, and you're showing disparity with Manchester versus Birmingham, Liverpool versus Bristol, whatever it might be. Now, the reason why they tend to work really well is that these local titles, local kind of tier one, tier two news sites, so this is Bristol, this is Manchester, that type of thing, they like to run articles that show a difference in quality of life, access, whatever it might be, between different locations. It's very emotive. You're normally going to get really good pickups, so you might get 20, 30 regional titles running it, picking it up. It's normally quite a quick, very effective way of getting coverage. The drawback on that is that it doesn't work for clients really that aren't regional. So if you've got somebody who is just a big brand like Nike or Adidas, not that you're going to land those, but if you did, they are unlikely to want to do regional press. They just want to get into the big titles. So you've got to think about franchises, local businesses, anything along those lines, where you can show disparity. Housing market for a mortgage broker or a bridging loan or finance company, that's normally quite good. So you really got to get some context for who is it for, and then use your expertise to pair it up with the right approach. So those are typically the three ways that you're going to go about getting those links. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is modeling attribution and the long-term argument of do follow, no follow, brand mentions, and all the rest of it. We still today have clients coming through the door saying, I will only accept a do follow link. Now, those clients really are a little bit thick and they're behind the adoption curve. So there have been a huge amount of tests done in all sorts of SEO titles, big agencies, we've been part of some of them, that demonstrate that no follow links move the needle, they pass value. Even brand mentions are becoming very powerful. And I'll talk about that and AI in a second just to close. But the no follow, do follow attribution, it really needs to be put to bed. There was a statistic that a friend of mine at Rise at 7 ran, which is about no follow links in the UK. 86% of press titles link out with a no follow link. Now, Google's not stupid. It understands that if The Guardian only ever links out with a no follow link, it should probably take notice of it and pass value. So those are still gold dust, and it should be absolutely expected that the majority of links that you're going to get in press are no follows. However, it's the visibility, it's the brand reach, it's been associated with those big titles. It's been able to add a brag panel on your website that says, as seen in The Guardian, as seen in The Independent. That gives you a lot of weight in terms of conversion rate optimization. Like even if you add that onto a PPC landing page, it's going to convert better. And if you're running a lot of ad spend, you're going to cover the cost of a good PR campaign anyway, just by moving the dial 1 or 2% in terms of conversion. So those are added benefits. Now, the last part is your brand mentions. So they're kind of looked at as implied links. Now, you've got to remember, Google has always been able to crawl the page, all the content. So it can read all the words. And as long as you're kind of fairly well established, it's going to see your brand name. It's going to understand exactly who you're about. That's your entity, your brand entity. You may also have a spokesperson, might be the owner of the business. That's another entity. It's going to connect those two things together. Then it's going to look at the context of the article and what it's all about, hence wanting to deliver really relevant coverage, right? The context of the article, okay, it's about a subject that's related to your business. I know that you're an expert. I can connect those things together and pass value. That implied link has a huge amount of value. That's a brand mention. Now, the last bit is where AI comes into play. So you've got tools like Gemini, which is Google's version of AI, and you've got ChatGPT and you've got Claude and a few others. Now, they all work in slightly different ways, but in the large part, again, we did a study with Surfer back in the day, and it indicated that these tools surface brand mentions in almost as much as links. Maybe even the more recent studies show that they get surfaced more. So these tools are able to crawl these pages, see the brand mention, take notice of a paragraph or the bit that it wants to serve up through its fan out models, and serve it up to users. It doesn't need to be linked in order for it to have value. So at the time of speaking now, our KPIs are 10 placements, which will include a minimum of 70% links, do follow or no follow, and 30% brand mentions. I suspect in the near future it's just going to get switched out to 10 placements because brand mentions have value, they move the dial and they influence AI search. No follow links move the dial and influence Google's traditional index. That's it. That's the summary. Myth dispelled. You just need to understand that all of this is part of a bigger piece. But digital PR is really important. You've got to remember it's for most businesses now, the barrier to entry has been reduced. You've got to get it in the mix. You also want to get cited by these big titles frequently, so that you're getting, seen in the BBC, seen in the Guardian, Telegraph as frequently as possible, as long as the coverage is relevant, in my opinion. And you've got to use what's normal for your industry as a bit of a gauge. I don't think you need to be doing digital PR every month because although it's done based on freshness is a large ranking signal. If you've got coverage in the last few months with a big publisher, that should be adequate. It shows that you're in good favours with titles that Google trusts. But yeah, if anyone's interested in having a conversation about digital PR or getting a quote, feel free to reach out. Right now, the campaigns are loss-making for us, but they're very, very impactful for clients. We will be increasing the prices and we will be reducing the deliverables because ultimately we're delivering far too much value for what it costs. But for now, if you want to order a campaign, we've got a couple of slots left for December coming up, and then we're into the new year, and I suspect the changes are going to take place from then. Anyway, I hope that's useful. Gone through the parts of digital PR, how to do it properly, other bits and pieces, modeling impact. You just got to use the traditional searches. You've got to use the tools. You've got to monitor brand uplift and ask clients where they're seeing you from. Back to the old days, attribution. A lot of these tools just aren't tracking keyword data like they used to. So you've got to ask the question, and it's all part of a bigger piece. Anyway, that's it done. Episode 9.